For sure. I got my gag, so you know what that means. It's a bust back thing. I ain't going out like a hoe. When you coming to get me, I got the fofo. When you come to down me, player, please don't miss. Cause that don't do nothing but get my trigger finger pissed. If I live, I live. If I die, it's cool. Cause I know for sure when I was here that I was a fool. If you gon' drill me, come on and drill me. It's all good cause I got some people to see. Why I'm here, I'm getting full all the time, get blunted. My company on the move, we bought the Benz 500. AKs and Glocks in the back of Lexus Jeeps. Having big baller parties every other week. This is the click, nigga, 226. Black connection, nigga, again, the code is 226. Dropping dope hits, taking a nigga bitch. While you're on that flight, I'm busting nuts in your wife. All assault rifles, the weapons that's on my team. SKs, AKs, M1s and carbines. Fulfilling dreams, going to the top, nigga. Don't play a hate, cause we'll still hit your block, nigga. Baby gangsta ain't nothing nice. A young nigga, trigger happy, that'll put it in your life, ain't right. Represent uptown to the fullest, finger on the trigger, and I'm ready to pull it. Got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? What you won't do, nigga? That's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? What you won't do, nigga? That's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? Uptown on the way, bitch. So let us through. Finger on the trigger. What you won't do? Downtown, get out the way. That's all you on you. Take it how you wanna, bring it how you feel. My niggas is conscious and we kill or be killed. Fuck doing drive-bys, man, we do a pull-up. The nigga on the passenger side automatically die from several gunshot wounds to the head. On the scene he dead, Chopper City niggas fled. Won't you listen to Ziggy, get your car doors bulletproof. It's raining chopper, so get a bulletproof roof too. You got yay, download it, nigga. 9-6, you getting napped, so you best not show it, nigga. But that's when you blow it, nigga. You don't get kicked in, we want you. Yay, high-powered AK, balls moved in your face, no trace. Beat the case, go to the weight, make sure it ain't a fake. I want your name, plate, cash, and your Versace shoes. If you're stingy, get plucked, nigga, that's all on you. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Busters, get out the way, that's all on you. Street shit is what I'm into. You got them coming to get you. Don't hesitate, nigga, or the BG gon' have to split you. I'm down for whatever, I'ma ass with that chopper. If you playin' with me, then them 50 shots gon' stop you. No bullshit, and nigga, my dream is to make a meal. Paper chasing ain't no faking, player haters get killed. Young trill, baby gangsta into pimping them hoes. But before I trick the hoes, my money goes to my nose and fat. Optimos, t-shirts and jabos. Soldier Reebok, straight sticking to the G code. Uptown is the home of the carjackers, robbers, gangster rappers, head splitters and kidnappers. Philip C is where I shop for that D. Not the 17th, the real niggas in that 3. Play with them hard head niggas, they split them. Raw dope, they sell it, I get it, I can tell it. How it go, back up or get bang, nigga. Street smarts the game, nigga, gotta let them hang, nigga. Pussy nigga got beef with the night creepers. Me, brother, and Diesel riding with them street sweepers. Old nigga want slang without a click. He don't want share, so we gon' ride on that bitch. We bout to turn your block to a war zone. I'm warning you to bring the little kids in they home. Cause when we spin the bin, bullets just getting spit. I gave you a fair warning, so if you hit, you hit. Cause I ain't slacking when I do what I gotta do. Stop being nosy, bitch, but that's all on you. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Downtown, get out the way, that's all on you. Got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Play ahead to get out the way, that's all on you. Toting choppers in the 9-6. Wigs getting split. Get out the way, cause if you hit, you hit. You bitch.
Wow. Whoa, so check it out, bro. Yesterday, KOT got his ass whooped by Domo because he came on there making these race real arguments by saying, oh, all you got to do is tell somebody they black and they black, blah, blah, blah. And that's really how everything goes here. So I made some comments to debate some people out, and it worked. I made the comments about a lot of y'all argue just like this nigga KOT did, and when he got his ass whooped, y'all use the same frame of logic, same exact thing. We are this because people said we are, or people say we are. So therefore, then I think that I am, pretty much. So this is what happened. This is why Candy Pan got his ass destroyed in our debate, because he don't understand how to separate what's fictive from reality. And I keep saying it over and over again. All my debates are the same. It's basically separating what's fictive from reality. When I debated Ruben, he believes that Negroes were all up and down the Nile Valley, and these people are our people, and that's where the Bantus come. I just ripped him to shreds because that's not reflecting in reality. Same thing with race. Concepts of race are just idealistic, they're notional. They're not reflected in reality. So when I heard KOT giving his argument and laying his premise, I'm like, this is literally what all you guys do. Black Hebrew Israelites, Afrocentrics, when you want to claim Kemet, when you want to claim that race is real, you make all the same arguments. So the idiots spoke this morning, and they said dumb shit. You know, idiocy begats idiocy. Oh, well, the government says you're black, so you're black. So it just goes back to someone saying you're something, or someone claiming you're something. You can't show the shit in the natural world, which is what I proved in our debate. So today I want to give a history lesson behind the usage of the word Negro, and why KOT felt like he could use that in that debate, and why, again, explain it again like I did last night, why Domo clean sweep this ass, because he's using a crude method to try to prove a damn point, right? There are no black people. They're fictive. Just like there is no Harry Potter. That's fictive. It's all of human imagination. People are real. Your racial designations are not. And only people that can separate fiction, what's fictive, from reality can come to those conclusions, because you guys are so entrenched in what's fake all the damn time, and whatever you say is your perception is your reality. Whatever you perceive, whatever you say that comes out your fucking mouth is your reality. So it's hard for you to disentangle yourself from it. But anyway, y'all keep watching me. This is what's going to happen to you. I'm going to show you exactly what's going to happen, man. Just keep watching me. I told you, I'm Agent Smith in this bitch.
You. Yes, me. Me too.
Just as KOT said, all I gotta do is prove that they were called black. They were called black, brother. So I win the debate. And wrong, you got your ass defeated, beat, destroyed, just like Pan got beaten, how Hemi got beat. They got Christians in North Africa. Therefore, we didn't get Christianity from white people. We were already had it. That's that racial identity shit. The racial essentialism shit. So anyway, all of that shit's mythic. It's modern myth. Like, some of you guys are good at dispelling ancient myth, right? And foregoing ancient myth. Like, you'll be like, oh, the Bible's fake. Greek gods fake. Mount Olympus fake. Modern myth, y'all stuck and entrenched in it. So we're gonna go into how these racial designations were applicable to various groups back in the day, because that was one of KOT's points, one of his major points, as how the Portuguese and I believe the Spanish crown, and how these people would designate Native Indigenous Americans as black. For several purposes. Domo brought a poignant point out that one of the purposes was to justify enslavement, which is true. That is a historical fact. But the point is, they actually classified motherfuckers based on these arbitrary racial designations. So they would classify Indians as Negroes, all type of caste, proyecto, a lot of things a lot of words that pretty much denote blackness, darkness, or whatever. And they had double meanings. Sometimes it wasn't literal. Sometimes it was literal. So I want to go over that history and actually educate people, because you people don't fucking read. You guys hate reading. You hate studying shit. This is why with this AI shit, when you just type in 2 words and then be like, I heard JJ earlier talk about you can Google search that Congolese Israelites are a thing. You can Google search and show that there's Israelites in West Africa. You know, he's an AI master. He would type into AI and tell AI exactly show me proof for Black Hebrew Israelites. Boom. And it will generate all of the quote unquote proof. And that's all you need. You know, I've been saying for the longest, affirmation is not confirmation. But when you deal with idiocy, again, idiocy begets idiocy, right? That's why I became the light bearer, man. I'm here to enlighten people. I'm here to pull your ass out of darkness. These other motherfuckers trying to keep you in it. So let's deal with the Barbie squad and proving them to argue like KOT. You know what I'm saying? This is just going to be, hopefully, I can get through this pretty quickly. I'm going to read this entire chapter tonight to y'all. You know, we actually read here about the usage of the word black and how it transformed over the years, how it became applied, who was applied to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Don't get too far ahead of you. So we're going to get through this, man. We're gonna go through it. We're going to elucidate the matter. You heard me? Jersey. All right, so let's get to it. This is Jack Forbes, which Abos absolutely abused this man's works, and they misrepresent the fuck out of this work. Nowhere in Jack D. Forbes' book does he claim that majority of African Americans are Native American. One, he doesn't claim that the real Native Americans are black people or black Africans or whatever. He doesn't claim that. He doesn't claim Ivan Van Sertima to be true. None of that. All he's doing is surveying the evidence and saying how certain words and terminology was used and applied to various groups, including Native Americans, and comparing and contrasting the uses. But you got Aboriginal power and other dickheads using Jack Forbes to try to buttress their Aboriginal claims, and nothing in this book does that. This book is not designed for that. You damn Sues have hijacked Jack Forbes' work for your own fucking personal agendas. So we're in chapter 3, Negro, Black, and More. The evolution of these terms as applied to Native Americans and others. So these terms have been applied historically to Native Americans for different purposes, different reasons, but the word was applied to them. They were seen as quote unquote Negros, right? They were seen as these things. So again, race is arbitrary. It's a naming convention, so to speak. It's just people telling you what the fuck. Okay, these are black people, these are white people. That's all it is. And then when people get upset because they worship at the altar of race, it is sacrament to tell the truth about race. And this is when idiocy begats idiocy. You can't tell the truth. This was applied during the European colonial period, all the way up to the modern period, right? This is how it was applied. You don't distort, you don't get to pick your own history. Well, nowadays we got AI, so I guess you can. You guys are going to construct your own goddamn history. No, black is a holy word, brother. It's holy. Negro, Black, and More, the evolution of the terms as applied to Native Americans and others. And we are reading from Africans and Native Americans, the language of race and evolution of red, black peoples. And we're on page 73, and it is written by Jack Forbes. It says different tendencies in the use of Negro and Black In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizenship and civil rights. The court stated, the word black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all black persons. I'm going to stop right there. This is what Domo was pointing out, I believe, in his rebuttal round. I think the rebuttal round was the strongest. He was going over the usage and how they would use it in a denigrating way or to justify enslavement, which we're going to get into a little later. It says, but the term Negro does not include all black persons. We are of the opinion that the words white, Negro, mulatto, and black person, whenever they occur in our Constitution, must be taken in their generic sense. That the words black person in the 14th section must take it as distinguished from white and necessarily includes all races other than Caucasian. So basically, they want to put everything into the term black persons. All races other than Caucasian, us versus them. You know, they creating a false dichotomy, which race itself is a false dichotomy. But now we're accumulating false dichotomies. This is from the California State Supreme Court, by the way, in 1854. This was the mindset back then of the people that were over that jurisdiction. They said that the words black persons in the 14th section must be taken as contra, which means against, distinguished from white, and necessarily includes all races other than the Caucasian. So in California, the word black encompasses everything except Caucasian. This is how it was applied. Since it was written down, a governing body, I was told a governing body, a government, then it's real. No, this is all arbitrary, man-made bullshit that someone imagined and made up over fucking night. It goes on to read, as convoluted as the quote may be, and it's very convoluted. It's going to be, the history of race and its usage is very convoluted because it's arbitrary. As convoluted as the quote may be, it expresses a strong tendency in the history of the United States, a tendency to identify two broad classes of people, white and non-white, citizen and non-citizen, or semi-citizen. Remember, the California state said all races all races other than Caucasian fit into black person. It says the tendency to create a two-caste society often clash with the reality of a territory which included many different types of people. And this is what keeps rearing its ugly head to all of you race fanatics and race realists out there. The issue is diversity. We don't fit in singular entities known as race. We don't fit into those things. Majority of people are a hodgepodge, are a composite of different ancestries, all of us. So trying to fit us into one little box and say you're this, then this is all you are, is ludicrous and does not reflect reality. That's why it only exists as a human imaginaire. And human imaginaire, it doesn't have any substance or properties. It just someone fucking wrote it down and said you were that. And according to you, that's reality. Again, perception is not reality. Anyway, the spoon is not bending, right? We learned that in Matrix. Remember, the spoon is not bending. It says, including many different types of people of all colors and different degrees of intermixture of European, American, African, Asian. American Indian people, whether of unmixed ancestry or mixed with other stocks, were at times affected by the tendency to create a purely white, black social system, especially when living away from a reservation or the tribal homeland. In the British slave colonies of North America, along the Atlantic coast, many people of American ancestry were at times classified as blacks, Negroes, mulattoes, or people of color. And these terms were, of course, used for people of African ancestry. The manner in which Americans, and let me say something about this African ancestry. Do you know people that are pale white? They got 30%, 40% African ancestry, 30 to 40% African ancestry, and some even high as 50%, and they're white as hell. Are they black? Because I was told it means you got African ancestry. Someone told me it meant you got enslaved. You got your ancestors were slaves. Well, damn, that's every fucking body. The Irish were enslaved. They black. See how arbitrary this shit gets. It says the manner in which Americans and part Americans were sometimes classified as mulattoes. and people of color from New England to South Carolina in the colonial empires is explored elsewhere. The purpose here is to illustrate how the term Negro has been also applied to people of American descent. The concept of Negro needs first to be analyzed in terms of its historical development. As noted elsewhere, the late medieval period in Italy and the Iberian Peninsula saw people being variously classified as Albo, Alvi, Bianco, Branco, Nu, Nigri, Negri, Negro, Negre, Preto, which means black, and as of intermediate colors, Laro, Loro, Yor, Berrettini, Rufo, Pardo, Olivastre, etc. It is apparent from the evidence that the term Negro or its equivalent was not used for a race or for a single stock of people or to point to ancestry of ethnicity. It was usually a simple description for perceived color or appearance. So he's explaining how it was used at the onset in Italy and the Iberian Peninsula. From this point, it involves into these racial groups that we see that people invoke today, right? We find many instances where the color negro is used when describing persons, or negro algo, loro, or loro casi negro, etc. That is, it is quite clear that a perception of color is being described, and not ancestry, ethnicity, or race. Muslims or Saracens are often described, as noted earlier, in the terms of being negro, bianco, or loro. For example, in 1543, the Spanish crown ordered the mulattoes could not be taken as slaves to the Americas under the general license for esclavos negros. In brief, mulatto and other slaves who are not Negroes were forbidden to go to the Americas without special royal license. Thus, in the late medieval and early modern period, there is no equivalent to the recent North American tendency to utilize the terms negro or black for persons of alleged negro or black ancestry. People were usually described as black, olive, brown, red, copper, or whatever, according to their skin or hair color only, not according to a racial scheme. Because remember, these things were not in existence yet. It says, on the other hand, there was a tendency to utilize the term negro or its functional equivalent. More, or more, German, Dutch, and French, in a very broad sense. Albrecht Dürer, for example, although certainly aware of the existence of Americans, is recorded as stating that there were only two types of human beings, white and black, or Moor. The Portuguese, as we shall see, also tended to use the term negro to encompass many non-Africans, people whose skin color was a shade of brown. It would appear that in this sense, black can be conceived of as opposite of white, and in a dualistic mode of thinking, all humans most logically fall into one of the two categories. So what we're reading about now is, again, how this false dichotomy, black and white fallacy, starts to develop. And its usage, negro or more, almost becomes equivalent to non-white or third world in recent usage. We must, however, briefly explore the use and meaning of more, mari, moro, negro, negre, etc., before arriving at any premature conclusions. Nevertheless, to summarize, we can say that by negro, an equivalent is meant a range of color shades. For humans, generally dark browns, always less extreme than true black, but approaching the darkness of black, and also including very often people of medium shades of brown, whose color seems to contrast sharply with white or clear shades. The issues involve the perception of brown and other shades of color intermediate between black and white will be discussed early in the next chapter. Here we will proceed to illustrate how terms meaning black have been utilized for people whose skin colors are often of various lighter shades. And I just want to just make this sidebar again for Aboriginal power and the whole ABO movement. Y'all don't read this shit because again, none of this shit has anything to do with y'all fucking spurious ass claims, your identitarian ass claims. Y'all use that I think therefore I am method too. All you gotta do is say that you're a Native Indian or you've always been Native Indian. Your people always been here, and 90% of y'all Native Indians, and that's it. That makes it real. That's how all of this shit works. Y'all use the same fucking framework for all your identitarian arguments, and we see it over and over again. Again, this book does not support that. As we've been reading, it's just giving the breakdown of how these skin color terms and these racial designations evolve over time, and how certain groups that you wouldn't expect in modern times, if you didn't study this shit, it was applicable to, right? It says in Latin, niger, negri, would seem to be the predecessor of Spanish and Portuguese negro, Catalan negre, Italian noir or new, French noir or noir, black, and negre, black or dark person. These terms correspond with the Dutch swart, German swarts, English black. Swarty has come to be the equivalent to dark rather than black. As applied to humans, these terms do not necessarily imply a true black color, but merely a range of dark shades approaching black or reminding one of black. Thus, there is a considerable range for interpretation. An early Spanish-French dictionary, 1607, translated Spanish negro as being equivalent to French noir, sombre, obscur, ofusque, brun. Negro de la Guinea is equivalent to un negre, un mor. Right, because the word Guinea literally means black, so it's really like, being like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not oxymoronic. It's like superfluous. That's what the word is. Being superfluous because you're saying Negro de la Guinea, the Negroes of Negro, you know, and that's how that's how Guinea was named. Oh, these are Negroes, the Guinea, the people of Guinea, they're black, right? This is where it came from. So Negro de la Guinea is equivalent to un negre, un mor. As will be noted in the case of Dutch, the above allows for dark, obscure, and brun to be subsumed under negro and uses French more or more as equivalent to negro from Guinea. The term more and its equivalent were widely used in late medieval and early modern Europe, according to Simonet in his study of the language spoken by the Mozarabes, Christian Spaniards under Muslim rule before 1492. Moro meant negro and corresponded to Castilian usage in which moro, which applied to horses whose color was negro. The corresponding more, marus, and moro were derived from Latin morus and ultimately from a Greek word meaning oscuro. Similarly, Mozarabic, moro was related to moro, and moro, mor, mare, and more, French, meaning moro, negro, hombre de color. These forms stem from Latin marus, also from Greek. For the dark oscuro color for the Mauritanos or Moros, peoples of Northwest Africa. The Mozarabic, marel y moreno, corresponding to Castilian, Catalan, and Portuguese moreno. Subnigur, fuscus, that is less than black, darkish, pardo. French morel, excuse me, I don't speak French. Moreo is Italian, etc., were derived from Latin morulus, moreus, and the diminutives marus and morus. Finally, Mozarabic, Morisco, corresponding to the Castilian Morisco and later Morisco, stemmed from Hispanic Latin Moriscus, for Moriscus, Mauritano, derived as above. In 1591, an Italian went to Cabo Verde a comprar mori per India Occidentali, that is to buy African slaves for the Americas. To summarize, the people of Northwestern Africa, Algeria, Morocco were anciently known as the Mahdi or Mauritanians, and the name in both Greek and Latin came to mean negro or black, but also various shades of so-called obscure color, i.e. darkest shades, for which the terms such as fuscus, Pardo, and Loro were often used in later times. And I just want to make a sidebar on this as well, because we do know they were enslaved. The people of Cabo Verde was enslaved, and they're not necessarily dark skinned, right? Some of them are white as hell. Some of them are very light, very olive tan as well. But as you can see, they still have this term Mari or Mauritanians or whatever, more or whatever. It says, in any case, one can see that Mari, More group of terms in various languages did not refer to absolute black or to blackish alone, but could indeed refer to a range of darker skin colors. This is also true as regards to negri in its forms. For example, a 1494 source states that the king of Portugal possessed pretos de varios cores, acobreados, pretos, e anegrados. Abet itam rex negros vari colores, urfos negros, et aub negros. Clearly the term aub negros next to negros indicates a variation, while preto encompasses all of the stated colors, copperish or reddish, and so on. An Irish Gaelic saga of the 900s, copied in 1643, states that Danish-Irish raiders attacked Spain and Mauritania in the 800s. From the latter place, they carried off the great host of them as captives to Erin, and these are the blue men of Erin, for Mari is the same as black man, and Mauritania is the same as blackness. Long indeed were these blue men in Erin. The Gaelic text uses Mari and Negri and Mauritania and Negrituro, obviously borrowed from Latin. The concept of blue men is described in the original Gaelic words. From this text, we can see how the term Mari for Negro spread to Northern Europe, and at the same time how both words could be used for shades of brown, since from our modern perspective, the Mauritanians, Berbers, Moors, and others are not regarded as being black. And I just brought that up. I wanted to sidebar and make that clear. They were using these terms to describe Mauritanians, these Berbers, i.e. Moors, or what some of them getting called Moors, right? But they weren't necessarily blue-black, or they didn't look like the people from Guinea, obviously, but they were being called this term, which denotes darkness of skin or black. They were being called this term. This is why Jack Forbes is bringing this out. And again, for any apples that may be watching or stumble upon this video, this is not teaching anything about aiding and abating your damn doctrine about your wanting to be nothing but Native American, and everybody that's an African American has to be Native. And none of this book doesn't even say anything of the like. It's just breaking down color descriptions, the origins of racial designations, and how it was applicable to certain groups. That's all it's doing for a majority of this book. Now, he does have another book, The American Discovery, and I have this right in my hand, The American Discovery of Europe, where he makes some spurious arguments here about American discovery of Europe, just as the book says. He does have some crazy ass beliefs there, but this here just surveying the literature, the available literature and documents to see how these words were in use during their epochs. What else it says here? Where were we? So again, we read that the Berbers, Moors, and others are not regarded as being quote unquote black or blue in skin color. It may be, of course, that they have become much lightened due to mixture with Romans, Spaniards, Arabs, Vandals, and so on. But some of that change in color could have preceded the 800s. Saco describes the Berberiscos as being fusky, dark, moreno, and aceitundo, tunado, which is olive color, like I said earlier in his study of ancient slavery. The use of Moor in the Dutch language will be discussed below, but here it is useful to note that the medieval Dutch understood by that term a very dark color. So that color of coal was compared with that of a Moor. Also, it was said, and I can't read that because I don't read Dutch. You know, maybe if I had my bro Cedric, he could read that. But I do see the word swart, which I know means black. He is black as a Moor is what that says. The spread of Marus to north can also be seen in Scotland. My people is very active on Facebook. Let me close that. The spread of Marus to the north can also be seen in Scotland, where in 1504, 1505, several references to Moor losses are found. At the time a child was born, referred to as Maurice Barney, or Marus born, Late in 1512, 1513, one finds Elemore and Blake Eileen used, one assumes, interchangeably. By 1527, Eleanor the Black Moir is referred to, while in 1567, 1569, there are references to Naguère de Moray. Now, we're going to move on to the segment, the Portuguese use of Negro for Americans. Insofar, and when he says Americans, he means indigenous Native Americans. That's how he uses the term in this book. Insofar as the use of Negro or its equivalent for Americans is concerned, it is well to begin again our analysis with a brief review of usage in the Portuguese language. First, it must be noted that Europeans generally regarded the Americans as being of intermediate color, pardo, louro, berrentino, or olivastre. For example, in 1519, it was said of the Brazilians, non sono ne neri ne blanchi, ma di colore di ulivo. That is, that they are not black or white, but of olive color. But the same writer also remarked that the Brazilian canoemen he saw were so black that they could have been taken for sailors of the Sea of Styx in hell. Another Italian in 1533 described them as di color olivastro e più presto negri. That is olive colored and almost black. In 1492 and 1493, the Caribbean islanders were said to be of louro color, white more than black. But in 1524, the Carolina coast people were said to be of dark color, much not unlike the Ethiopians. And you hear a lot of abos quoting this one in particular. I've heard this in abo circles, Aboriginal Power, and others will say shit about this one line. But did you hear the rest of what I read on the quotes? What that would denote is you had different shades of people. Some were lighter, some were darker, which is what we find in the phenotypic analysis in Native American skeletons. And the gene, those that have survivable genes and were able to sequence the genome, we can see that some were intermediate, some were light, and some were dark. We literally can confirm this with genetic science, right? But what happens with identitarians like the Black Aboriginal movement, they will take certain quotes like this and put them in isolation and say, yeah, that's clear that these are ancestors, they all black, blah, blah, blah. But there's other quotes saying that they're olive colored, that they're very light. That, you know, they're not really doing a survey of the data. What they're doing is trying to reinforce their dogma or their doctrine. They become doctrinaires. And this is what most of these people do in these groups. And that's why they run into Lucifer and they get punched in their fucking face. And it's going to go on to say, thus a range of color was perceived, with some being almost white and some of darker shades. That's literally what we see when we're reading these descriptions of these people. It's the same thing with Black Hebrew Israelites. They will always run to, oh, Hitler called Jews Negroid parasites, or oh, this person in Britain that was over the synagogue was called the Black Jew. This person was the, Baruch de Spinoza was said to be black. They will always go to that, but they will never go to all of the damn accounts when they describe Jews, because you got Jews being described as white, pale, brown. You got all of that. They will only hyper focus on the one thing when it says black or dark, because they're identitarians and they're only trying to do what Domo was telling KOT. It's confirmation bias. That's all you're doing. You're trying to confirm your bias instead of educating and enlightening yourself or elucidating the damn matter. Anyway, from 1549 through 1565, the letters of Jesuit missionaries in Brazil, usually addressed to colleagues in Portugal or Spain, frequently refer to the Americans as Negroes, as well as using terms such as Hinitios, which is pagans, Brash, and other forms of Brazilian and Indios. So again, they labeled them Negroes, right? And in the debate, KOT says he brings up the Negros de Tara, which means the Negroes of the land, which was used in contrast to the Negroes de Guinea, which is the Negroes from Guinea, right? But his point was, if I show that they're called Negroes, then that's what they are because someone called them that, and that's what y'all do with every fucking thing. It's always about somebody calling them, whether they're authoritative or not. Long as someone claims that that person is that, then it's real. And that's what he used. He used that on y'all ass, and he got his ass kicked. It says, in April 1549, Manuel da Nobrega, the leader of the Jesuits, addressed a letter from Bahia to Samayo Rodriguez in Lisbon, in which he refers to the Portuguese in Brazil as living in sin because of their having many negras and lots of children by the said black women. The editor, Sarafim Liete, notes in a footnote, negras isto e mujeres indias. Negras name negros da África ainda os não havia na Bahia. A few lines later, Nobrega refers to the Indios desta terra. Thus, the Jesuit father called the American women living with Portuguese men negras, a term which, according to Leite, could not have denoted people from Africa because in 1549, there were few or no African women in Bahia. Nonetheless, Nobrega also uses the word Indio. This pattern is repeated time and time again, as we shall see. What does it signify? It was seen that Indios or Braces of Brazil were in fact both Negros and Indios, because Indios were simply a special regional kind of Negros. We must bear in mind that Brazil was part of Las Indias or India. Now, I want to sidebar this before, because Abba will read this and like, see, we told you there are people. No, this is just saying this is how they designated these people. Like today, you're designated as quote unquote black or black American. These people just using arbitrary terms to designate these people. Sometimes it's based on skin color. Sometimes it's based on other ulterior motives. Sometimes it's based on slavery, right? It's just an arbitrary designation that these people made for native indigenous people. That does not mean people today that are classified in a similar, with a similar classification are the same people. And this is why I keep driving home in every fucking video I deal with an identitarian topic. I have to keep driving this shit home. Just because people are classified with the same goddamn term. That's why you got people thinking that fucking Negritos and Sub-Saharan Africans are somehow related. Renuko Rashidi, right? Does not necessarily mean that they are the same. Anyway, you got people on the continent, you call everybody on the continent black or Sub-Saharan Africa black. And a person that lives in Somali is not going to be the same as someone who lives in Nigeria. I don't care if you put them in the same classification or the same category. That does not change that. And this is why this shit is fickle. Race has always been fickle since its inception. It's always been fickle. It's always been arbitrary. But you can't accept that because you worship and pray at the altar of race. All y'all do. If you're a Black Hebrew Israelite, Afrocentric, all you guys are in some form or fashion a race realist. All of y'all. It says, in that the geographical designation for people native to that would be Indian. But in addition to a purely geographical designation, they might also be considered to be Negros, even as the people of India proper were often called Negros, as we shall see below. So in East India, these people, the word Negros, and we're going to learn, was being widely applied to them by the British, which was their ruling power at that time. So if we're going off ruling powers and governments, and there you go. Oh, well, they're black then. It says, in addition to being Indios, the coastal Brazilians were also called Braces because they resided in the part of the Indias called Brazil. When Africans are referred to in the Jesuit letters, they are always called Negros de Guinea, blacks of Guinea, to distinguish them from Negros da Terra, blacks of the land of Americans. And KOT was pointing this out, and he thought this was going to be his smoking gun. And it just seems like that he played Russian roulette with that gun and ended up shooting himself. In August 1549, Nobrega wrote to Rodriguez in Portugal about the Portuguese men and their negras used for mistresses. He also referred to os negros who are being enslaved and to the carijos as negros. Of course, most Portuguese possessed mistresses or wives who were American. In June 1551, Brother Diego Jacome wrote from São Vicente to Jesuits of Coimbra, Portugal, referring to Americans as os negros. In August 1551, from Pernambuco, Father Antonio Pieres wrote to Coimbra that the Negroes are now very calm. Also from Pernambuco in August 1551, Nobrega requested from King John II, alguns escravos de Guinea as servants for Jesuit Colegio de Bahia. In June 1552, Antonio Pieres, writing from Pernambuco to the Jesuits of Coimbra, stated, "Nesta capitania grande escravaria así de Guinea como da Tara, tem uma confraria do Rosario." That is, Pernambuco possessed a great number of slaves, both African and American. They had confraternity of Our Lady of the Rosary, VM shit, Virgin Mary shit, the common confraternity for slaves in Portugal, as noted earlier. The editor, Serafim Liete, notes that the Confraria do Rosario in Pernambuco seems to have been for all slaves, American as well as African. In July 1552, and again on several occasions through 1558, Nobrega asked for 3 or 4 slaves from Guinea for the Jesuit college. A very interesting letter is one prepared by dos meninos do Colegio de Jesus de Bahia. That is by the young Americans studying in the school, Diego Paribia and Quantia. Although probably edited by a Jesuit, this may represent the first letter written by Americans in a European language from Brazil. And if in it they refer to an American leader as El Grillo, as a negro, and to other natives as negros. So again, there's more and more examples. What we're compiling is more and more examples as this term use and its usage being applied to indigenous American peoples in the 16th century, right? Again, it's just a designation. It does not mean that people are automatically tied to each other. And this is what race realism gets you, because you'll be like, well, these people are called black, so therefore they're my people, or these people are connected in somehow to these people, or Ivan Van Sertima was correct. No, these are just people making these baseless designations like they do today. Like your ass, you that are watching, you do the same thing, right? It does not have any bearing on reality. It cannot be used in a damn biological connector, as you know, many of the Abos, Black Hebrew Israelites, and as we see KOT was trying to do the other day. We find, for example, El Grillo, who is a Negro, very well known and feared among them, and that El Grillo es Negro muy grave. El Grillo was at the same time an Indi pagan and friend of the Portuguese. So he was, I guess, un grave, or very serious. In August 1552, Nobrega wrote from Bahia and remember, we're still reading about the descriptions of Native Indigenous Americans, right? In August 1552, Nobrega wrote from Bahia to Lisbon, referring to the native people as negros. In May 1554, Antonio Velasquez from Porto Seguro wrote to the Jesuits of Coimbra that to estoy en este Puerto Seguro y la vida que hago y en lo que me ocupo es esto, enseño la doctrina a los negros y negras. That is, he was preaching to the Americans called Negroes, right? So he literally was addressing these indigenous people here of Porto Seguro, addressing them as negros. He also referred to the negros and los mamelucos de esta tierra as pupils. And mamelucos is like a mixture of European and native indigenous. The editor notes that by negros y negras, he meant indios y indias. So he literally was referring to Indians as negros. And again, according to y'all race realists, all what makes race real is people acknowledging that. So y'all got to eat that. And that's how KOT was arguing, and that's how y'all argue. It's just very clear. If someone acknowledges someone as that or labels someone as that, then boom, that's them. Anyway, in 1556 or 1557, Nobrega prepared one of the first works of literature written by a European in the Americas, a fictional dialogue on the question of the enslavement and conversion of the Gentios of Brazil. In it, Nobrega frequently used negro for indio, as when he refers to the people of El Gato, the American leader, as negros. Diete, in a footnote, states that Nobrega used negros por sicario a brancos, mas trata-se de indios. La mesma hace sicario escreve Nobrega a de Joao III de Olinda, 14 de septiembre de 1551, negros foras do Gentio. And so there it is right there. He's calling them negros, right? These pagans, right? Falando de Indias libres, como a palabra, negros, Nobrega, emprega. There again, the negros right there. También de indios, como se la varias veces neste mismo diálogo, en particular, na fala de no guerra sobre os indios convertidos de Capitana de Sao Vicente. In other words, Nobrega used both Negro and Indios for Americans, Negro being used in the sense of the opposite of white, and Liete gives several examples. In May 1557, Pires wrote to Nobrega that batice el hijo del gato y lo case con su negra, fue hecho este oficio con poca solemnidad por cuanto el indio estaba doliente y quasi pudo venir a la iglesia. Thus, Pires refers to El Gato's son's wife as negra, while a sentence later he says indio. So again, he's showing you that these people are referring literally to native indigenous people as negros. There's more and more examples of this. And this is all he's doing throughout the duration of this chapter. It says a month later, Antonio Blasquez wrote from Bahia to Father Engatius Loyola in Rome to the effect that an American with his negra wished to be baptized. In April 1558, Blasquez, in another letter to Rome, noted that most conversions were being made among the slaves, whom the Portuguese treated like horses and beasts, burying them in los muladores, muleyards, or dung heaps, and that the Portuguese, todos tienen negras con que estén en pecado, y los más tienen esclavos que no lo pueden ser. That is, the Portuguese were all living in sin with American women and possessed slaves. So basically, the Portuguese living in sin, they were marrying them, or they were having sex with them, and they were obviously keeping them as slaves. In February, which goes to my other point, I'm a sidebar for a minute. I'm a sidebar for a minute right here. Most people are like, oh, descendants of slaves. Well, Native Indians are descendants of slaves. So proving that this terminology, the way y'all using this, again, it's arbitrary. Oh, to be black, it means to be descendants of slaves. Well, a lot of groups were descendants of slaves. Anyway, in February 1559, Antonio de Espiritu Santo, writing to the Jesuits of Bahia, used negro for American and noted that El Gato, alias Vascos Fernandez, had come with French goods de manera que quasi todos os negros ven vestidos. Thus, El Gato's natives, people called negros, were wearing French clothes. In June of 1559, Sa referred to Vascos Fernandez, Principal de los Indios, and to his son, Mama Moiku, es el pobre negro. Similarly, one of estos gentiles, these pagans, was called El Negro. So again, more examples of native indigenous people being called Negro. And in July 1559, Nobrega wrote to Portugal that the Christians were, for the most part, living in the interior areas with the negras as mistresses, and that their slaves were also living together without proper marriage. Nobrega also wrote in a letter to the governor that 8 Negroes of Guinea were killed by a party of 60 valiant Negroes. By using Negroes of Guinea for Africans and Negroes for Native Americans, Nobrega is able to refer to both in the same sentence. So he was using, again, Negroes from people that are literally coming from Africa and literal Native Indigenous Americans. Again, in September 1561, Father Leonard, I'm going to call it Leonard, I want to say Leonardo Valle, wrote to Rome that another Jesuit was muy suave to white as to Negroes. In his work in Brazil the next year, June 1562, Do Valle also wrote to Rome using Os Negros for Americans, while in June 1565, he wrote to Jesuits of Portugal about Hum Negro Bautizado, and also he uses O Negro for a Tomayo. In a footnote, the editor states Negro por Indio. I'm not going to read all that. I can keep going back and forth to both languages. Anyway, thus Negro is used for Indian, not for someone from Africa. The editor suggests that a European copyist might have been responsible for this usage. But as we have seen, it's too consistent over the years to require such an explanation. In any case, it is clear that many Iberians and Italians, whether in Europe or America, were comfortable in using Negro, Negri, etc. for Americans. Father Joseph de Anchieta, another prominent Jesuit in Brazil between 1570 and 1584, carefully refers to Africans as Negros de Guinea, while calling Americans Indios da Terra, Escravos da Terra, or Brasis. Remember, da Terra means of the land. Escravos means slaves of the land. So they made the distinction there. Other Jesuits sometimes use the form India Brasilica, Concubina Brasilica, or Lengua Brasilica. In 1587, a secular author, Gabriel Soares de Sousa, mentions Africans as Negros de Guinea and Pretos de Guinea, while Americans are usually called Indios da Terra. On the other hand, Soares refers to American women as being muito preta, very dark. So again, referring Native Americans as black or very dark or whatever, as contrasted with her son, who was Tayo Alvo, very white and albino. The father was not very preto. The occasional use of Negro for Americans seems to continue into the 18th century. In 1602, for example, a Portuguese reportedly was living on Farinhão de Noronha Island with 13 or 14 Negros. In 1612, however, the French found a Portuguese there with a few tapuyas of both sexes. In 1648, the Jesuit Antonio Ferreira wrote, same Negros now a Pernambuco, meaning without Negroes, no sugar, no Pernambuco. Since American slaves served in the sugar industry of Pernambuco from the very beginning through the 1580s and later, the term Negro in this case is very probably equivalent to slave. This meaning will be explored further below. So when Domo was debating what's his name, KOT, and he brought up that this name could be used to enslave people, he was absolutely correct. Again, an arbitrary term. They make double meanings to this shit, and they would use this term to designate people as slaves. We even did a whole episode on the use of Canaan and the whole idea of enslavement of Canaan and the biblical idea and the trope that was used and employed here in the Americas, saying, hey, you guys were born to be enslaved, and we don't have to bore you anymore. Because back then you used to bore your slave, mark your slave. Your skin color is your bore. That is your identity as a slave. We did a whole episode reading on that, giving the sources on that as well. Anyway, in a letter of Antonio Vieira from Rio das Amazonas to Portugal, March 24th, 1661, he writes, and I'm not going to read that. For the entirety of this, I'm not going to keep reading back and forth, trying to read Portuguese, trying to read Spanish, and read English. In this case, it would seem that Vieira uses negro for indio in the second sentence quoted. In 1712, Rafael Blutal's Dictionary of Portuguese and Latin was published, a significant development, and that he was one of the earliest dictionary makers to incorporate Brazilian terms. Of special interest is his definition for Mameluco no livro ocho de sua historia. It says, you see, it's going in again. Blutal thus states that in the Mark Graves' Natural History of Brazil, the term Mameluco was used for a child of European father and Negro mother. And we've already read in this book the term being used, Mameluco. George Margrave had gone to Brazil during the Dutch occupation. His notes on the natural history of the area were edited by John de Laet and published in 1648 in Latin. What the original Latin edition actually states is, and then it reads it in Latin, that is that the child of the Brazilian mother and a European father is called Mameluco. Somehow, Blutal, or some predecessor chose to substitute negra for Brazilian. Mameluco in the period referred to an American-European mixed blood primarily, if not exclusively. In 1755, a Portuguese law extended personal freedom for the Americans of Grão-Pará and the Maranhão in Brazil, with the exception of those whose mothers were slaves of African descent. Clause 10 stated, among the many regrettable practices which have resulted in the disparagement of the Indians, one prime abuse is the unjustifiable and scandalous practice of calling them Negroes. So right here, they're acknowledging all of the history of calling these people Negroes. We have documentation from the Portuguese law when they're extending freedom to these people that they were being designated as Negroes. This is actual history. Just because someone designated as something does not make them click or come together. You know what I'm saying? Does not mean it's a biological connector, right? But if you're a race realist, you would think like that. You will come to that damn conclusion. Anyway, it says, which have resulted in the disparagement of the Indians. One prime abuse is the unjustifiable and scandalous practice of calling them Negroes. Perhaps by so doing, the intent was no other than to induce them in the belief that by their origins, they had been destined to be the slaves of whites, as is generally conceded to be the case of blacks from the coast of Africa. The directors will not permit henceforth that anybody may refer to an Indian as a Negro, nor that they themselves may use this epithet among themselves, as is currently the case. So this is actual history. This is how it was used. And then in 1755, as you can see, they wanted to end that practice of calling Native Indians Negroes. This Portuguese usage is extremely significant, not only because American or part American slaves could be referred to as Negroes in early records, but also because it very much affects one's analysis of population statistics in colonial Brazil, where in fact the categories of Negro and Escravo must have often included enslaved American Indians and mixed bloods. An analysis of modern Brazilian census data would, I believe, demonstrate that Americans and part Americans are still being classified as Negroes for certain purposes. In India, the Portuguese also frequently use the term Negro for Indians, as well as Baco, which means darkish. Alva or Branco, which means white, was sometimes used for light-skinned persons of Moro or Muslim or Arab background. Alfonso de Albuquerque in the very early 1500s encouraged his men to marry the white widows of dead Muslims at Goa, but he did not want them to marry the black women of Malabar. So this is how he's talking about Indians. The Indians were literally called black too. The East Indians literally called black, and we know they're very dark as well. And that's what they do. They applied the same logic they applied on Native Indigenous people to Eastern Indian people as well. And that's what we're reading. So again, the term has always been in use. It's always been arbitrary. Always. Nonetheless, in 1524, it was said that the Portuguese of Goa who were married were almost all married to negras. This usage continued, and in fact, the term Negro came to be used in 1640 in such a broad way that it was applied as an abusive epithet even to Indian-born Portuguese. In 1645, an Italian Franciscan in India referred to the Indians, generally the people of the country, as blacks. As blacks. No, black don't mean that. Black don't mean that. I'm black. We out. Man, this word has been applied to several different damn groups, including Native Indigenous Americans, including East Indians, and including Asians. We're going to get to that point too. We're going to get to that point too. This shit been around, man. Anyway, you see what happens when you actually fucking read, you actually study about this shit, you actually know. Like, you niggas don't fucking know. That's why y'all all make the same dumb mistakes. That's why y'all all lose. Y'all all die by my sword. And I get another victory on the board. Anyway, in 1645, the Italian Franciscan in India referred to the Indians, generally the people of the country, as blacks. A Christian bishop of Brahmin ancestry consecrated at Rome in 1635 was never allowed to officiate in Portuguese territory and was called by a Jesuit a bare-bottom nigger. That's what the word said. That's what the book say. A bare-bottom nigger. In 1750s, the Portuguese government made it illegal to refer to Indians as Negroes and other insulting and opprobrious terms. In 1759, the viceroy at Goa issued an edict denouncing the contempt with which natives of this state of India are treated by the Europeans, who called them niggers, curs, and other insulting names for no other reason than the difference of color. Nonetheless, the above decree outlined the use of Negro for Indians was not promulgated by the authorities of Goa until 1774. Now, this is real history. See, y'all don't want to deal with this. Why? Because you have made this shit into a sacrament. Now, this word black, oh, we the ones that were called this, we're this, we're that, this is our people. You have made it sacrament. You have made it, like I said, all of y'all worship at the altar of race. All of y'all. KOT, all the members of the bar, all the Black Hebrew Israelites, Afrocentrics, y'all do it all day on Sonetta. JJ does it. Like, all y'all do it. One can see then that with Indians and Americans both being referred to as Negroes in the 1500s and later, one cannot be at all certain of the ethnic identity of Negroes sold in Portugal or of those resold in Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. As we review usage in Spain, it will become clear that both Indians and Americans were also on occasion called Negroes in that country. A Portuguese Latin dictionary of 1592 states, Negro cativo, which is Atiats, Negra, Atiat, Pisa, Negra Causa, I guess that's how you say that, and Preto, Niger, Negra, Negrum. Thus, a captive Negro is equivalent to an Ethiopian, which was seen to refer specifically to Black Africa. On the other hand, Negra Causa, something Black, and Preto refer only to concepts of Black. A dictionary of 1611 is similar, except that Negro de Guinea is equivalent to Ethiopian. Preto and Negro are both equivalent to Latin Black. An English Portuguese dictionary of 1701 had these equivalents. Blackness is negridao, black, causa preta, negra, escura, o sombria, a black, amor, amoro, mara, Kafri, black Amor of Ethiopia, Moro, Amor, Pretinho, Preto, Si Negro, Negro, O Kafri, a black. Thus, the term Kafri, Kafir, is equivalent to Negro. Kafri was widely used in the Indian Ocean regions, especially. Interestingly, Black Moor was equated with Moro without a color qualification, as well as with Ethiopian. Further, Black was equivalent to Sombre or Obscure color, as well to Negro and Preto. Blutau in 1712 stated the following, and I'm not going to keep reading other languages. In short, by 1712, Blutau was able to identify slave status with the term Preto. Other evidence indicates that as the years went by, Negro became a harsher term than Preto and more like North American nigger. A 1784, how y'all feel about Jack Forbes using that word nigger in here? You recording history. Y'all don't like that? Anyway, a 1784 French dictionary has negre, negro, preto, moro, escravo, que se tira das costas de Africa. Thus, the connotation of negro equals slave, were well established, a figurative meaning being to treat someone harshly or very cruelly as a slave. In 1836, another dictionary maker pointed out that Negro, in addition to referring to obscure darkness, such as one on a night without stars or moonlight, also possessed connotations of a moral nature. Sadness, for example, while preto referred properly to the color of something burned, was never used in a moral sense. And again, touching on Domo's point again on the figurative use of the word Negro as well. J.I. Roquette, in his Portuguese-French dictionary of 1862, equated negra with negrese, esclave, noer, and negro with negre, negrese, hombre, femme. Again, I'm not going to keep reading the other language. Thus, the meaning of negro as black slave is made very specific. Antonio Bracio, in the study of pretos in Portugal, states explicitly, negros preto mais simpático, pois negro y sinónimo de escravo, termo injurioso. Thus, negro had become synonymous with slave, and preto was preferred as a nicer term. It seems very likely that by the beginning of the 18th century, and probably early in Brazil and in the other colonies, Negro had already acquired its negative meaning of slave or slave-like. That the Portuguese later used the term Negro as an equivalent to slave and as a term of abuse is also well illustrated by many works on Brazil and Portugal, which cite poems, songs, and sayings which convey negative images of Negros. A modern Portuguese dictionary says of Negros, and it reads, a woman of black color, a slave, a woman who works a lot. Negro is similar. And it reads in English, one who is of dark color, black, sombre, darkish, blackish, vile, odious, indignant, adverse, a man of the Negro race, a man who works a lot, a slave. C.R. Boxer, the noted historian of Portuguese Empire, translates Portuguese negro as English nigger and states the following: the Portuguese habit of referring to Indians, Senegalese, and even to Chinese and Japanese as niggers was fairly widespread and lasted longer than is usually realized. He notes that the Maratha War of 1737 to 1740 in India was partly caused when a Portuguese official called a leading Maratha man a nigger, a word which they interpreted as slave, for they were assured that this was what we called the Kafirs of Mozambique. The Portuguese were, of course, selling Kafirs as slaves in India and used the term Negro as well as Kafiri to describe them. It is also very significant that in Italian Filippo Sassetti, who lived in Lisbon and various Portuguese colonies in the 1570s and 1580s, specifically refers in a letter of 1585 to the Americans of Brazil as negri. He reserves the word Indiani for people of India. We may justifiably suppose that this use of negri reflects Portuguese usage. We may note again that many Jesuit letters to Rome using Negro for Americans. Insofar as the term Negro in the Portuguese Empire became synonymous with slave or with a servile status, it of course lost any mandatory color reference and became a general term of abuse. This usage accords with an earlier Portuguese tendency to use the word saraceni and later moro to refer to enslaved persons in preference to serving a slave. Unfortunately, many English-speaking authors tend to translate Negro as black rather than as nigger or slave, and I failed to see the implications for Brazilian history of the above distinction. So again, just to even harp on Domo's point again, they literally did use this word in that way. They used it to denote people of slave status, or people that would be enslaved, or people they deemed as slaves. So it did have a double meaning. So, moving on to the next segment, the use of Negro in Spanish. The Spaniards in Spain seem to have been inclined to utilize the term Negro in a broad sense to include darker Americans and Indians at least. For First, however, it is necessary to discuss the way in which Negro was used in Spain. In the early years, it seemed to have been merely a designation of color, usually contrasted with Bianco or Loro. In Valencia, between 1480 and 1510, for example, one finds the following kinds of descriptions for slaves: white Moorish female, black and white captives, black Moorish female, Wolof, Turk, Canary Island female, black female of Wolof, white female, black of Barbary, two captives, one of white called Mubarich, age 45 years, and the other black named Osmet, age 30 years, a Jew from Barbary, Al-Arbe, Bedouin, Moors of Barbary, a white Canary Island captive, a black female of Tripoli, Almosara, Sora, age 17 years, Arab, as well as Lows and Indians and Americans called Negroes. It is clear that there was no noticeable tendency to use the term Negro either for slave or as general replacement for other descriptions. The children of a white and a Negro were called either Loro or white. A Spanish authority notes that also some children of white men and black females were whites. In 1525, in the Canary Islands, one notes Juanico, child of white color, his slave son of Maria, his black slave. The boy was classified as being of white color, and he and his Negro mother were slaves of the same owner. In records of the Canaries, one finds repeated reference to de color negro, de color loro, de color algo vaca, and de color bianco, in addition to the innumerable cases where the de color is clearly implied. The list of Negros and others sold in Las Palmas after 1514 include descriptors such as Negra, Barbarisca, Negro Morisco, Negro Bozal, Moro Negro, Blanca, Negro Ladino, Cabo Verde, Prieto, Bianco Morisco, Negro Mandinga, Morena, Negro Helof, Walla, I don't know how to say Helofe, Negro Guinea, along with Loros, Indios, Moros. So a bunch of ways to say the same damn thing, pretty much. In 1549, one finds Juliana, a mulatta of 25, as sisters to Gaspar Negro of 16. A change perhaps begins in the 1580s when one finds a Negro Loro. The term is repeated on occasion as in 1563, 1569. As you guys can see, this dude has done an extensive research on how these words have been used. And the whole chapter is about how it applies and has been used in Native Americans and other groups. So again, trying to hammer in a concrete position on this is impossible because it never was used. The term was never used to be concrete in the beginning, even though people implied it was. It never was. It was used all willy-nilly in several different ways for several different groups, as we're reading. The term repeated on occasion as 1563, 1569, 1586, 7, 1591, it might imply that Laurel was being classified as Negro. In fact, however, it appears to be shorthand for Negro, algo Laura, black, almost brown. Negra, cas Laura, and Prieta mas Laura que Negra. One also finds Negra with a mulatto son, a Negro amulattado. That is mulatto-ish Negro and Negra with a mulatto son, presumably in 1584. Thus, it appears that in general it is color which is being described throughout the 16th century, along with occasional references to religion, place of birth, or nationality. As noted earlier, the late 16th and early 17th centuries witnessed proliferation of new color terms, including Negro atazado, meaning very black, Membrillo cocido, meaning stewed quincy, Moreno, claw, clear, mulatto, lenado, lionish. Most of these terms were clearly color focused. Nonetheless, there may have also been tendency in the 17th century to broaden the concept of Negro to encompass lighter shadings. In 1695, a Spaniard stated that it was necessary to include the Negroes captured along the Mediterranean coast and taken to Sicily as infidel Moros, because all these Negroes are lionish color, which is known as Membrillo cocido. They are morals of the religion of Muhammad, and it's possible to capture them just as they capture us. The significant thing here is that the Muslims of Leonardo, lionish, and stewed quince color were called Negros. Why Negros if they were not of Negro color? Fulos, Fulani, were regarded as being of fulo color, similar to membrillo cocido, although also on occasion as negro. Our analysis must now review the cases where Indians and Americans were called negro. So basically, he was showing how people of different shades, people of different colors, the people of Mediterranean are obviously not the same as people in Guinea or in Benin, Togo, or Ghana. They're not Ghanaian, but they were calling these people Negro too, right? These people are probably of Amazigh origin. They followed the Islamic religion, right? Probably spoke Arabic, right? And they were designating these people as Negro, right? So it says, our analysis must now review the cases where Indians and Americans were called Negro. Since such uses may well imply that the 1695 statement quoted above reflected earlier attitudes as well. In Valencia, one finds in 1504, Antonio formally sume de Calicut de 12 años called Negro. In 1507, Antonio de 10 años called Negro. In 1515, Cristobal de Años of India was called Negro. Nanye, now Francisco of 22 years, called Negro, and also in Francisco's day 27, he was also of India. Both these people in India were called Negros. One also finds a few cases where Indians had no color descriptor giving or were called lor, as with a slave from Malacca, India in 1514. One individual was classed as lor cas negro in 1515. In any case, it's clear that Indians were often designated as Negros in Spain, but that a light color might lead to a different designation in a few cases. So again, the Spanish did exactly what the Portuguese did. They referred to East Indian people as Negros, right? This word, calling people black, is not exclusive to one person, one group. It never was in history. This word was being thrown out there. It was being applied to several groups, as we've been reading all night. It says, insofar as Americans are concerned, the pattern is somewhat similar. And again, every time he brings up Americans in his book, he's talking about Native Indigenous. As noted earlier, many of the slaves from Terra Nova, Newfoundland, were called Negros, although some were not categorized at all, and one classified as Laura. Other Americans of Valencia were classified thus: 1495, no color mention; 1509, from Terra de Negros, Brazil; 1509, Negro; 1514, no color; 1515, two as Loras Escuras, but also counted as Negros. In 1516, 85, Brazil as Negros. Blanca, which is white, in 1516, 4 Blancos from Pernambuco. Thus, it seems clear that Americans could be described as Negros in Spain, but that other distinctions such as Loro or even Bianco might on occasion be used. One must also note that the case where Loras Oscuras could be counted as Negros in 1515, because it resembles the 1695 attitude cited above, that is to somehow use the term Negro with a double meaning. On the one hand, to refer to black, dark color, and on the other hand, to point towards some broader concept, such as a non-white. My data does not allow for further clarification of this issue, but it's to be suggested that there was stronger tendency to classify all persons originating in the Tierras de Negros, Ethiopia or Africa, such as south of the Sahara, as Negros regardless of actual skin color. For example, the Fulanis. Many of the Fulanis are very light, right? It says, by the same token, the concept of Negro was extended to other tropical and non-Western people for brown color, but not to the exclusion of the use of other color terms or ethnic names. Moreover, one has to note the Valencian notion, 1509, that Brazil was part of the Terra de Negres. In 1611, Spaniard noted that Negro was quite clearly Negro, had negative connotation, and was seen as being an extreme among the colors, opposed to white at the other extreme. Proverbs already existed, such as, although blacks, we are people, and in the bath, everyone enters without light, and therefore one cannot tell who is black or white unless they are discovered talking. Given these ideas, it might prove easy to extend Negro to include unfortunate persons of brown color, especially if being sold as slaves. It should be noted that during the 16th and 17th century, slaves were constantly running away while others were giving their freedom. The free people of color could be arrested as fugitives from slavery, and if they did not possess a document proving their right to liberty, they could be jailed and sold. In 1589, Melchior Diaz, a man de color de membrillo cocido, scuro or darkish, was arrested. Diaz stated that his father and mother were both free people and that neither they nor any predecessors had been captives or slaves. But for being the color he is, it was presumed or pretended that he was a slave. This was part of that race doctrine, right? Like we're getting in the early years of this. This is 17th century, right? Again, remember what I told you. They had the ideology of the curse of Canaan and your skin being the marker of your slavery at this time. It says, thus a dark skin color was definitely a disadvantage in Spain. When away from friends or neighbors, similarly, signs of being a Muslim would arouse suspicion. If a membrillo cocido, a brown skin color, was a sign of slavery, then it was easy to see how the term negro might be extended in a manner of speaking to such persons. In 1579, as noted earlier, Bartolome Sanchez was captured as a suspected fugitive. He stated that his father was Blanche and that his mother was a negra de las Indies de Portugal. She had been a slave, but Sanchez claimed that he himself was free. In spite of being half white and probably half American, he was termed a black man. They literally called him a black man. Un hombre negro. That's how you say it. The general use of the term. So right here, are you guys going to accept history now? Are you going to accept this is how this shit was used. This is how this shit was employed. This is how it was enforced throughout the centuries, right? Y'all done made it a sacrament, a religious term now. It's like, this is who I am. I'm special. We're all special. This is our name. This is our right. We got to be unite. You know what I'm saying? Like Pan wants to unite everybody under the banner of blackness, whatever the fuck that means. That's all. Come on, Bombinos. Everybody, let's go. But this is what this nigga want to do, bro. It is based off of this facetious ass shit. Anyway, reading on, the general use of the term negro in Spain can also be seen in the instance in circa 1607 when the Annals of Seville record that the new unassimilated Negroes who introduced smoking tobacco to Seville must have been Americans. In India's, the Spanish crown official documents seem ordinarily to carefully distinguish between Indios, Negroes, and after 1550 and to 1580, mulattoes and mestizos. Nonetheless, numerous American slaves and servants continue to exist even after 1542. In Caribs, Mapuches, and other rebel tribes were being enslaved legally. Moreover, one must assume that many African-American mixed bloods were categorized as Negroes. In the early 1560s, a Spanish official wrote to the king that in the island of Puerto Rico, there are 15,000 Negroes and less than 500 Spaniards. In all of the island of Hispaniola, there may be 2,000 Spaniards and there are over 30,000 Negroes. The same is the case in the island of Cuba, and in Veracruz, Puerto de Caballos, which is in Honduras, and Nombre de Dios, Cartagena, Santa Maria, and the coast of Venezuela, where there are 20 Negroes to one white man. Now listen to what Jack Forbes comes to the conclusion here, because they were outlawed by the Spanish crown to get rid of this certain practice. So he's believing that this was a caveat of including bolstering these numbers of Negroes by including some Indians. So this is what he's going to say. It says, it seems certain that the official was using white and black in the sense of us and them. That is, those who would be counted on to support Spanish control and those who, because of their status, might aid an enemy. He states specifically that the French could capture Santo Domingo with 500 soldiers, and by freeing the Negroes, most of whom are Ladinos and natives of the land, and by liberating them so that they be no longer slaves, they would kill their own masters. Now, how could Africans have been natives of the land at such an early date unless most of them were half American? Moreover, it is well known that the Spaniards were mostly mestizos by that date, and that many of the Negroes were actually a mixed ancestry. It is quite obvious, then, that Negro was not being used in either a color or racial sense, but in the sense of slaves or dangerous others. This is borne out by an estimate for the population of Santo Domingo made in 1560, 5,000 whites, 13,000 mestizos and mulattoes, and 20,000 Negroes. It seems highly likely that the Spaniards referred to slaves generally as Negroes in the Caribbean, partly because the term became equivalent of slave, but also because such usage allowed them to continue to illegally enslave Americans without revealing that fact to the authorities of Spain. It is clear that many Spaniards were extremely reluctant to abandon the enslavement of Americans after 1542. So remember, if you know anything about Bartolomé de las Casas, he pretty much, he cried and went the distance for Native Indians, so to speak, to end harsh treatment and enslavement of them. So Jack Forbes is arguing, well, the workaround was to just call them Negroes, and then the Spanish crown won't know that they're still enslaving native indigenous peoples. So again, touching on Domo's rebuttal round. Again, that's why I like this rebuttal round so much. I was even in the chat like, he doing the work of Lucifer right there. He's talking like Lucifer. Breaking that shit down like that. Dutch and German usage. The Dutch may very well have taken up similar usage, especially since Negro and Neger were not originally Dutch words and had no immediate equivalent except more. Significantly, a Dutch-French-Spanish dictionary of 1639 has the following entry for Spanish Negro: noir, sombre, obscur, offusqué, brun. French and zwart, donker, bruin. Dutch. Thus, Spanish Negro could be translated as dark or brown, as well as black, in the view of the Spaniard residing in Antwerp in the early 17th century, the presumed preparer of the dictionary. This ambiguity undoubtedly facilitated making reference to all slaves as negro and neger in the Dutch language, regardless of precise color, and could have implications for early usage in Virginia in 1619 and 20, when negers were purchased from the Dutch. A Dutch-Spanish dictionary of 1659 also has negro translated as swart or donker, dark or bruin, while morena is equivalent to donker, bruin, olive color, olive color, and moreno. Cosa blanca, brown, something dark, is translated as swart and donker. The Dutch term bruin, brood, brown bread, equals pan, moreno, negro, blanco, prieto. Thus, wide room for the interpretation of negro is apparent. Moreover, it is clear that Iberian intermediate color terms such as pardo, loro, or moreno had no equivalent in Dutch except swart or more. It should be noted that for a very long period that the Dutch language used more and morion for black Africans and not negro or neger. This usage persists from the Middle Dutch language until the 18th century, and it undoubtedly reflects the Latin Romance use of moro for black or dark, as noted. To the Dutch, Moor denoted a black or non-white person, not a Muslim, for whom the word Turk seems to have been used in 1639. A Dutch-French Latin dictionary of 1573 states Moor, Umor, Atias, Marus. During the period from 1450 to 1560 in Antwerp, several individuals were identified as Morin, one of whom was sketched by Durer in 1521, another of whom Balthasar de Moor was an American from Brazil, a Swartan Slav. Black slave may also have been mentioned in 1540. In the 1550s, two Germanic-speaking persons lived in South America. And I also want to just sidebar on this because there's Moorish people, these people that always say, oh, the Moors, these people are Moors. That's because these Dutch people, these other people are using these terms that they've been using in the old world and the new world. And again, they're just designations. It does not mean the people that they're talking about are the historical Moors or the Iberian Moors. See how that works? See how we keep running into the same brick wall? Since something shares the same goddamn designation or term, then you automatically assume that, oh, these people over here in Spain are the same people in the Americas. You can't disentangle it, right? You're having a hard time. Anyway, where we at with it? In In the 1550s, two Germanic-speaking persons lived in South America, Hans Staden and Ulrich Smidel. I don't know how to read Dutch, so y'all got to bear with me. Staden sailed from Portugal in 1547 in his ship, which was going to trade with Weiss, I think that is, Morin, White Wars of Barbary. He later visited Cape Verde area where the Swate Morin lived. In the Pernambuco area, Staden mentions 30 Morin and Brazilian slaves, 30 Moors and Tupi slaves. His translator into Spanish, Edmundo Warnique, notes that basically notes that the Los Morenos Blancos eran los moros mientras los morenos negros. In other words, the Moor indicated a non-white or a Moreno person, and it could refer to Moros of North Africa as well as the black Africans with suitable modifiers. The same translator also notes in regards to the reference to Morin and Brazilian slaves that La Voz de Morin Quedais. I said I wasn't going to read that. In short, both Staden and Smidel utilized the term Morin to refer to natives, as did the Castilians. So basically, he showed that the Portuguese referred to natives and others as black. The Spanish referred to natives and others as black. And now we see the Dutch did the same exact thing. And this is why we say, this Native American was called Baltasar the Moor. It's just them designating them that based off colors or other meanings. It had nothing to do with connecting them to those damn Iberian Muslims or something like that. Anyway, in his translation of the Smidel's diary, Wernick states that in German, Moor meant persons of dark skin. Significantly, Staden's diary was published in Dutch at Antwerp in 1558, at Amsterdam in 1563, and 3 German reprints appeared in the same period. Filippo Pigafetta's work on the Congo, published in Dutch in 1596, translated Italian black into swart, and it said, and again, it says in Dutch, I can't read Dutch. So that is the mixed blood children of Portuguese men and Congolese women were either black or white or yellow black, and were called Mulakken, a Dutch equivalent to mulattoes. Although swart is used in reference to color, the term Morin is used generally for people from Nubia to Guinea and the Congo. It is also noted that the women and some of the men are not so swart, but are yellowish. The term Morin continued to be used for non-whites. M. Hammerson's diaries, 1639 to 1645, utilizes Morin for both Africans and Tapuia of Brazil, so natives, right? He also states, we got more Dutch here. We got more. The children of Morin of Guinea were not black at first, but brownish like Brazilians. And those born of Europeans and Africans were yellowish like wax and were called Mulakken. The Scootens in his voyage to the East Indies, published 1676, refers repeatedly to the Swarte Indian, and to the Ain Swarte Morin seems to be reserved for Muslims. The Swarte, so basically Swarte meaning black, the black Indians is what they're saying. Thus, Swart was used for East Indian Indonesians, natives, while Moor was being restricted in meaning, probably due to Portuguese usage. Similarly, the Voyage Journal of A.O., originally published in 1678, utilizes negers and negros for Africans and blanche or witte for whites. But in a later modernized edition, swartening is used in such a way to encompass both Americans and Africans. So more examples of native indigenous people being called black or designated by terms that which mean black or dark. They're using the same terms for Africans with Americans. Again, since after describing mixtures of Africans, Americans, and Europeans, the modernized states in German again, that is, the Spaniards were said to be more attracted to Swartenen, dark or black women, than to their own wives. But the original text states that the Spaniards were more attracted to Negerinnen, which is black women, or Getande, tan Indian women, than they were to their own European women. Wintergers, in his journal 1688 to 1710, uses Morin in a general sense to refer to Sri Lankans, for example, but also uses Swarts to describe East Indians. The inhabitants, he states, of Batavia, Java were Hollander, Morin, and Sinsen. Dutch natives and Chinese. A lady of Cochin was called a Schwarzenmutter, a black mother. They Graf's, it just sounds like mother. That has to be mother, right? They Graf's journal published 1704 also uses Moren for Indonesians, but he refers to the Moren of Mati Metanin, thus making it clear that Moren meant Muslim. In reference to the Javanese and Indonesian wives of Dutchmen, he uses the terms such as in Swati mothers, black mothers, basically. In the latter part of the 17th century, then the meaning of Moor began to shift from black or non-white to Muslim, including Muslims of East Indies. Swart began to be used more generally as terms for non-whites, embracing most of the peoples found from India through Indonesia, as well as Africans and occasionally Americans. So these 4 different groups being falling under Swart, which just means black, right? All of these people are being called black during this time. We can see a pattern where both Moor and Swart were flexible enough to embrace a broad range of brown to dark brown people. It is significant to note that Staden 1550s used the term Moor to refer to both white Moors and to black Moors. As we shall see, this is not reflected in much Dutch dictionaries, but there are exceptions would need to be noted. First, however, I will cite a French dictionary of 1571, which for Maurice has the Libyans, the Barbers, the Noirs, the Crews, the Vagabonds, the Grites, Africans, Numidians. Thus, there were many negative connotations associated with Moray, such as also attached to Negro later. But more significantly, the author states that there are both white and black Morays. A Latin-German dictionary of 1573 also refers to the Daewesen Moran, white Moors, although Ethiopia is equated with Moran land. 10 years later, a dictionary states of Ethiopia, a 1620 Dutch dictionary defines Moran as Swarte, Barber, and a bunch of more Dutch words that I can't say. Thus, negative connotations continue, but black, white, and yellow also color reference. But what is especially interesting is that from the 1550s until 1620, only white and black are distinguished for Moran, brown and intermediate colors being ignored until yellow appears. Many dictionaries from the Low Countries continuously equate Moor, Marus, Ethiops, Niger, Mormon with Ethiops, 1588, Mormon with Ethiops, a Moor horse, Ecus Niger, Moor with Marus, Ethiops, Maros Niger, and so on. This tendency continues into the 17th century, a 1602 work, as well as a 1651 Dutch-French dictionary has Moray. A 1701 Warner book has Moor, Morian, Un Moor, Un Ethiopian. Greater detail appears in De La Porte 1659 Spanish-Dutch edition, where we find, and then it gives you all the terms here that we read earlier into Dutch. We basically read all these words already. Thus, again, as in 1639, Negro can be equated with brown and dark as well as black. Moor is used for a black person as well as Moro, and as mosque is called a Turkish church. A 1691 English-Dutch dictionary has Moor equal Moor, a black Moor, a Swarte, Morion, Tawny Moor, a Gaeli Moor. Thus, English Tawny applied often to Americans. It equated to Dutch Gael, which is yellow. A Dutch Woordenboek of 1704 preserves earlier usage of Morian Ethiops, thus are called all persons who are black. A 1718 Portuguese Dutch dictionary is revealing in terms of color connotations. Because Portuguese pardo applied in Americans is equated with a Dutch Duncan Verwick or Swartachik, i.e. to both darkish and blackish. Negro of Kafri is equivalent to in Swat Moor Kafer or Kafri, with Moorland. Thus, Smart Moor and now Kafer are equivalent in Moorland as is still used as to refer to the land of blacks. As the 18th century unfolded, Swart tended to be used in place of Moor in Dutch dictionaries, but a change can be seen in a 1771 dictionary where the author also uses Neger, Moor, Morion, and then we got some more Dutch. Thus are called such people who have black skin, such as the Negroes, the Ethiopians, etc. This would seem to imply that Negers, Ethiopians, etc., were only examples of Moor. Moors. In 1783, a French-Dutch dictionary states, and then we got all the Moor, the Maori, and all of the words that match it, right? The Dutch-French section, and then we got the French and the Dutch matching the words here. We've literally read all these already. Thus, the dictionary prepared by the Dutch author offers an example of the clear implication of slave. Status for negre and also neger and zwart. We can also see that the transition from Moor to neger and zwart is being reflected. By 1844 and 1845, Dutch dictionaries have shifted the meaning of Moor to a North African. In 1913, it was said of a Moor that it was not in common use as compared with neger and zwart. By the later year, also, it was noted that neger had replaced negro in the 18th century, and that by European peoples, the Negroes became especially known as slaves in the colonies. And from that word, negro, also in our language, is a very common term. Thus, the close association of negro with slave is made clear for the Dutch language. Several other Dutch, French, and Dutch English dictionaries also list slave as one meanings of negre, negro, Maori, and zwart. Zwart, meaning black, as can be seen, was not used as a proper racial name in Dutch, and its application was not restricted to Africans. So we run into the same issue again. There's, for example, an early reference to the Swate Indian, the Black Indians in Sumatra, by a Dutch traveler, in addition to examples cited above. A dictionary of 1728 also translates American Indian from the French Indian to Dutch Swarten. Thus, both Moor and Swart were applied to East Indian Indonesians and on occasion to Americans, as noted. So again, we went through three different language groups already. We went from Portuguese, Spanish, and now Dutch, which is the hardest damn language to say, to sound out. We're trying. And then lastly, we're going to do English, and we're going to cap it off. Thus, both Moor and Swart applied to East Indian Indonesians and on occasion to Americans, as noted, which the Americans here are in reference to the indigenous. More recently, Asian contract laborers imported into Dutch colonies have on at least one occasion been referred to as Negro coolies. It is also significant that the term swart black or swart tahe is used by some Netherlands today to refer to all non-white or non-European people in much the same way that people in Britain currently use the word black. Now we're going to go to the uses in English. I know it's been long. How long have we been going? We've been going for an hour and 45 minutes. You know, it takes time to get through this book, especially because it's going in and out of different languages. But we're going to get there. It says, usage in English. By the 16th century, the English and Scots were referring to people of Africa as Moors, and then later as Blackamoors, Ethiopians, and Negroes. In 1591, Richard Percivale equated Spanish Mora with a woman, Blackamoor, and Morillo with brown, a little black Moor. Percivale was greatly amplified by Minshaw in 1599, and we find the following. And then it goes to More Vide Moro, a black Moor, Morisca, a woman Moor that has become a Christian, Morisco, a black Moor made to become a Christian, Morado color, Bure or Iran color, dark color, Morel brown, darkish color, a Moor, Moro, a black Moor, Vide Arabi, Negro, Negrillo, a little black Moor, somewhat black, Negrito, Negro, black, also black Moor of Ethiopia, Prieto, or Negro, black, brown. This translation reveals a great deal of flexibility, and both Moro and Negro are equated with black Moor, while black Moor is equated with Arab, as well as Morisco and Negro. Prieto and Negro are equated with brown as well as black. In 1617, Minshaw equated Latin Marus with Niger or Niger, black, and in another place stated Moor or Neger, a Moor or one of Mauritania, a black Moor or Neger, a Neger and black Moor in Ethiopian. Negro gradually came to be a common term, especially after extensive contact with Spanish and the Portuguese. What is not clear is the extent to which the term Negro was constantly translated as black. The automatic association of Negro with black color cannot be assumed for the reasons discussed thus far, and since even many black Africans are actually of medium of dark brown color. So really, the way they used it was hyperbolic, because you couldn't mean that everybody don't look like a damn Dinka. It's basically saying people that they called Negro were light, brown, and everything in between. It says, in any case, another association gradually arose in North America, and that was between Negro and slave. Early legislation commonly referred to Negro and other slaves, or to Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves. Over the years, Negro and black both became synonymous with enslavement. Again, harping on it again. This is why I liked Damo's rebuttal round so well, because he harped on this for a minute, and this is historical, actually. This really is how this word was being used. In 1702, an observer wrote that the 12th of Virginia consisted in slaves or Negroes. But 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was of white appearance was to be presumed free. But in the case of a person visibly appearing to be of the slave race, and for all you guys that are race realists, here you go. It is incumbent upon him to make out his freedom. So he had to prove his freedom, You white, you are presumed free. This is what came with the race doctrine, the race ideology that y'all so proud of, right? In 1819, South Carolina judges stated flatly the words Negroes has the fixed meaning slaves. What the English meant by the term Negro when they first began to use it is not clear. Certainly, it was not then synonymous with slave as a great many persons so classified were free. But in England and Virginia, did it mean an African, a black person, or any dark-skinned individual? Today, the term is not widely employed in Britain, although the word black is used to refer to people of various skin colors from all of South Asia, the Middle East, the West Indies, and Africa. Whoop, there it is. Arbitrary. Most unmixed American Indians, if living in Britain today, would be regarded as being black, especially if their ancestors were not known. Several illustrations can be cited to show that not only Africans, but also Americans and Asians were called black or Negro in Britain itself in the 17th and 18th centuries. In 1621, William Bragg claimed to compensation from the Company of East India and Summer Islands for several expenses, including for 13 Negroes or Indian people, 6 women, 7 men, and boys. And so much in the name of God is touching that business and touching the Negroes or Indians. In 1688, the London Gazette carried an advertisement for a black boy, an Indian, about 13 years old, run away the 8th instant from Putney with a collar about his neck with the inscription, "The Lady Bromfield's Black." In 1709, the Tatler carried an advertisement of a black Indian boy, 12 years of age. They don't use black for other people. Wow, why y'all say dumb shit? Then I got to come and show y'all. Like, this is idiocy. Anyway, 1709, the Tatler carried an advertisement for a black Indian boy, 12 years of age. Similar usage of language is also found in the play Mangora, written by Thomas More in 1718. In a scene taking place in Paraguay, an American warrior chant to an American woman, "Black beauty, come on. I must love thee or none. You see my face black." A student of history of black people in Britain has written that it should be borne in the mind that the word Negro in this period, the 1600s, could mean an Asian as well as an African or other person of African descent. Sometimes a performer in pageants is identified as one of the other, or the costume provides a clue through black performers were often required to personate American Indians. It seems highly likely that the term Negro was used in a very broad manner, especially since it had no more specific color meaning in English than would the words African or Indian. The term black was also used in a broad manner. It's arbitrary, I told you. In March 1765, English newspapers carried stories about a Native American preacher discovered and helped by Reverend George Whitefield. This preacher was the famous Samson Occam, a Mohegan from New England. The newspaper referred to him as a black who could speak English very well, who had preached to crowded audiences. Occam sailed to England that year. An American did not have to go to England to be called black. However, in Connecticut in 1711, a family of Indian servants consisting and one Rachel and her 7 children were distributed by will and were called black. So Native Indigenous, examples of Native Indigenous in the Americas being called black. The British habit of calling yellow, brown, or red people black is commented upon by Wiley Cipher in his Guinea's Captive Kings. Some examples will now be cited from the Americas to illustrate the use of Negro and black in English as applied to people of American ancestry. As an example from the West Indies is useful. In 1764, William Young was sent to St. Vincent as a part of the British occupation of that island. Living on St. Vincent were about 3,000 black cherubs, or free Negroes, about 100 red cherubs or Indians, and some 4,000 French and their slaves, according to Young. The British found it difficult to control Caribs, and wars were fought with them in 1771 and 1772, and again during 1795 and 1796. During the latter crisis, Young wrote an extremely anti-Carib tract designed to prove that the Caribs, the Garifuna, should be removed from St. Vincent. The latter were eventually defeated, and some 5,000 were shipped to an island near the coast of Honduras. Young was anxious to prove that the so-called black Caribs were not true Aborigines, but were in fact Negro colonists, free Negroes, or Negro usurpers. This was important to him because he wanted to show that they had no bona fide land rights or Aboriginal title. For our purposes, the interesting point admitted by Young is that the so-called blacks or Negroes were occasionally of tawny and mixed complexion because of American ancestry, and that their customs, personal names, and language were those of the native Garifuna. Still further, Young admitted that they had repeatedly intermarried with American women. He consistently refers to them as Negroes nonetheless. Young also relayed a great deal of hearsay information about how the black Caribs had originated, which is without foundation for analysis here. The important point is that a people thoroughly American identity, culture, and language were called black and Negro solely because of being mixed with African ancestry. This tendency continues, incidentally, among white scholars who, even today, often refuse to accept Garifuna's avowed feelings of Indianness and continue to call them black. Racial dictatorship. Nah, that work. You know how y'all do Dominicans? No, y'all black. Y'all just Spanish-speaking niggas. And everybody don't want to be called that shit, man. Oh, man. In 1619, some 20 Negroes were brought to Virginia. At least 11 had names of Spanish or probable Spanish character. Later, they were joined by Negroes and mulattoes with names such as Antonio and John Pedro. These Spanish-derived servants could well have been part of American ancestry. However, no evidence is available except that they were largely secured from captured Spanish vessels. In 1676, one Gowan, an Indian servant, acquired his freedom in Virginia. 2 decades earlier, Mahil Gowan, called a Negro, also acquired his freedom. It would appear that the Negro was probably father of the Indian in this case. In 1670, the population of Virginia colony was said to be 40,000, including 2,000 black slaves. Evidence indicates that there could not have been that many Africans there, and also that there were a great many American slaves or servants. Thus, the total of blacks must have included a good many Americans. So right here, he's surmising on this. In 1698, 3 fugitive Negroes were reported in North Carolina, of whom one was American. Similarly, a list of Negroes imported into Virginia 1710 and 18 by sea includes at least 69 Indians, mostly from the Carolinas. Likewise, list of Negroes brought into New York from 1715 to 1736 included many slaves of probable or stated American ancestry from Campeche, Jamaica, Honduras, and Carolinas and Virginia. In 1715 and 17 period of the Vestry Book of King William Parrish, Virginia records 1 year Robin Indian and 2 years later Robin Negro. In a similar manner, a 1691 list of Negro slaves in York County, Virginia includes Kate Indian, while a 1728 list of Negroes at the home house of Virginia planter includes Indian Robin. Robin, incidentally, is a common name for slaves of American ancestry. In 1748, there was an advertisement in New York for a Negro manservant called Robin, almost of complexion of an Indian. Talks good English, can read and write, and plays on the fiddle. In 1723, Virginia adopted a law depriving free Negroes, mulattoes, and Indians of certain basic rights. So basically, right now, he's running down history, showing you how these words overlap, how Native Americans and Africans mix. And this is why African Americans have a little bit of Native American ancestry, because of this period. There was some mixing between Africans and Native indigenous peoples. And we see that in our genome. That does not mean Ivan Van Sertima is correct. It just means that you have some Native indigenous American ancestry. Your Native indigenous American ancestors were here before Columbus, not your African ancestors. You see how we can compartmentalize that? See how easy that is to get? So he's running through that history and how some of these mixed people, or maybe fully Native Indian people, were still being referred to as Negro during this time in the 18th century. It says in 1723, Virginia adopted a law depriving free Negroes, mulattoes, and Indians of certain basic civil rights. The act was disallowed by British officials, but in 1735, Lieutenant Governor Gooch defended it by asserting that he wanted to make a perpetual brand upon free Negroes and mulattoes by excluding them from the great privilege of a free man. He wished to make the free Negroes sensible that a distinction ought to be made between their offspring and the descendants of an Englishman, with whom they never were to be accounted equal. Close quote. I was told, oh, the government did this, did that, and that makes it real. Okay, well, you're gonna go off of this too. This was a government official saying this. It says, since the act applied to Native Americans and half Americans, mulattoes, Gooch's language would seem to include them under the general category of tree Negroes and mulattoes. A welcome clarification of terminology was provided in 1719 by the government of South Carolina when it decided, and for preventing of all doubts and scruples that may arise, what ought to be rated, taxed on musties, mulattoes, etc. All such slaves are not entirely Indian, shall be accounted as Negro. There's a governing body right there. They tell you, hey, Native Indians, they're not entirely, they call them Negroes. They're classified as Negro. The significance of this act is, of course, that all later enumerations of Negro and Indian slaves in South Carolina have to be analyzed with the thought in mind that any Negroes could be one half or other fractions of American ancestry. And it's like Eric L. Coleman says, it takes a lot of blood and blood quantums to be an Indian, but only take one drop to be a Negro. But to be an Indian, you got to have all type of goddamn, you got to show so much ancestry to be considered an Indian, but one drop make your ass a Negro. As you can see, early 18th century, this was the case here. It says New Jersey was also an area where Americans and Africans intermixed with considerable frequency. In 1734, an advertisement appeared for the recovery of one. He is a half Indian, half Negro. He plays the fiddle and speaks good English. In his country, Indian, one was not specifically called a Negro, but in 1747 advertisement, we read, run away on the 20th of September last from Cohansey, a very lusty Negro fellow named Sampson, aged about 53 years and had some Indian blood in him. He had with him a boy about 12 or 13 years of age named Sam, was born of an Indian woman and looks like an Indian, only his hair. They both talk Indian very well, and it's likely they have dressed themselves in the Indian dress and gone to Carolina. Similarly, in 1778 advertisement, we read, was stolen from her mother, a Negro girl about 9 or 10 years of age named Deanna. Her mother's name is Cash, was married to an Indian named Lewis Wallace, near 6 feet high, about 35 years of age. They have a male child with them between 3 or 4 years of age. Any person who takes up the said Negroes and Indians shall have the above award. From these examples, we can see that people of mixed American African ancestry could be called Negroes in New Jersey. Cyrus Bustill, a Philadelphia baker, black, born in 1732 in Burlington, New Jersey, married a Delaware Indian woman. His son became a Quaker and an anti-slavery leader and was known as a Negro. In Canada in 1747, 4 Negroes and a Panis, American slave, escaped from Montreal. A French writer referred to them as simply Negroes. Quite clearly, persons having an American ancestry or appearance of it could be called Negroes in Virginia. In 1774, one Robert Chavez, a fiddler, ran away from the South Branch of Meharin River in Mecklenburg County. He was called a Negro man, but the Chavez name is common among the Lumbee and other Native American groups in nearby Carolina. In 1773, Tom, a Negro man of yellowish complexion, much the appearance of an Indian, ran away. His hair is of a different kind from that of a Negro's, rather more of the Indians. In 1771, John Twopence, a Negro man, ran away in Essex County from the Blandfield estate of Robert Beverly. Twopence was of yellowish complexion, and the name Twopence is a common one among Americans in King William County at a later date. In 1759, one Saunders, a runaway slave, was described in South Carolina as a Negro man of the musty breed. Musty meant either European American or American African. In 1775, the authorities in South Carolina were ordered to apprehend John Swan, a reported free Negro or mestizo man. In South Carolina, other runaway slaves' advertisements show that the child of a musty woman was called a Negro in 1738, and that a Negro man was said to have Indian blood in 1748, and that the musty men were referred to as Negroes or as one of a group of Negroes. East Indians could also be termed Negro in Virginia. In 1786, an advertisement speaks of an East Indian Negro man called Jean, a slave born. He speaks French and English and will call himself free. And this is all reminding me of Israelites, like, we the only ones that go by a byword. We all be called niggers, a Negro. Been reading all night, man. It's 9:22. How long we been going? Well, I'm over my time. I'm 2 hours. And I've shown over and over again this word has been applied across the damn board. It says, in the 1780s, certain white Virginians began to agitate for the termination of the Gingiskin Indian Reservation in Northampton County. The reserve was described as an asylum for free Negroes, and it was alleged that the Americans have at length become nearly extinct. There be at this time not more than 3 or 4 genuine Indians at most. The place is a harbor and convenient asylum for an idle set for free Negroes. In 1812, it was argued that the place is now inhabited by as many black men as Indians. The Indian women have many of them married black men, and a majority probably of the inhabitants are blacks or have black blood in them. The real Indians are few. The reserve was divided, allotted in 1813, and by 1832, whites had acquired most of it. In 1828, the Gingiskin descendants were described as respectable Negro landowners. I wonder if the Abels hijacked this shit. This episode reminds me one of the Young's attack upon the Caribs of St. Vincent in 1795, and also the more recent attempts to allot and acquire Indian lands. A similar attack took place upon the Pamunkey Mattapony in 1843, which failed, and against the Nottoway from 1830 to 1878, which seceded. By the 1840s, at least 2 Nottoways were registered as free Negroes. The heirs of one family were described in 1878 as all being Negroes and very poor. There you go. There you have it. Aside from Virginia, where persons descended from female Americans imported after a certain date could obtain their freedom. All slaves of American ancestry remained slaves throughout the entire duration of slavery unless they were emancipated or ran away. At the end of the 18th century, Bob, a carpenter fellow or of a yellowish complexion, musty has bushy hair, ran away. He was said to speak more proper than Negroes in general. Other persons of American ancestry who were free also were called black or Negro. Paul Coffey, the noted half American, half African merchant, was called at various times an Indian, a black man. And this free and enlightened of African, he signed petition with Indian men and all free Negroes and mulattoes. Other examples of a similar nature abound. One author writes that the Sampsons and Galleys, property owners and school teachers, though predominantly of Indian blood, were leaders among the free Negroes of Petersburg, Virginia in 1860. Virginia tax rolls and census records from 1780s to 1850 have numerous examples of people of Indian tribal identity being classified as free people of color or as mulattoes. In fact, the practice was almost universal. Nonetheless, some were also classified as FN, free Negro, or as B, black, in various records. In certain counties, such as Southampton in 1830, and in parts of Delaware, virtually all free non-whites were categorized as FN. Although enumerated under the Free People of Color column, these lists included people of the Nanticoke and other tribal groups. Under certain conditions, persons of African descent could be legally classified as members of an Indian tribe or as Indians, and they treated with the Creek Nation. The Commission of Indian Affairs noted in 1832, an Indian, whether full or half blood, who has a female slave living with him as his wife, is the head of the family entitled to a reservation of land. Also, free blacks who have been admitted as members of the Creek Nation and are regarded as such by the tribe, if they have families, are entitled to reservations of land. In 1860s, all persons of African ancestry who had been slaves were granted by treaty citizenship in the 5 civilized tribes of Indian Territory. The general trend, however, was to enroll the more visibly part African persons as freedmen, citizens, and to restrict their tribal status. When lands were allotted in the 1880s to the early 1900s, most such persons were not allowed to assert American ancestry and were therefore denied future rights as Indians. During the Seminole Wars, a new term seemed to have been coined, that of Indian Negroes. One source, General Wiley Thompson, asserted in 1835 that they are descended from Seminoles and are connected with consanguinity, meaning they share common ancestry. Other writers referred to them as the hostile Negroes and mulattoes in the Seminole Nation, or simply Indian Negro. However, the Uchi language, mixed people of that type were referred to as Goshi T'Challa, or red black people. In North Carolina, many people of Lumbee Indian Territory identity were categorized at times as Negroes. In 1837, Charles Oxendine of Robeson County was punished as a free Negro. In 1842, one of the Brave Boy family was called a Negro, while in 1857, a Chavers was charged as a free person of color with carrying a shotgun. He was not convinced because the act specified free Negroes, and he was charged as a free color. The court stated that free persons of color may be persons colored by Indian blood. The indictment cannot be sustained. Yeah, so in this Native Indian labeled Indian, and he used that in his knowledge of the law, and he got off on that. In a similar situation, some white men took away guns from Pamunkey people in Virginia. In 1857, the governor had them returned, but stated, if any become 1/4 mixed with the Negro race, then they may be treated as free Negroes or mulattoes. Virginia at this time defined a mulatto as 1/4 or more African. In Louisiana, 1856, the Black Code was said to refer to offenses involving slaves, Indians, and free persons of color. Many narratives of ex-slaves recorded in the 1830s reveal Indian ancestry. One such person called an Indian was Uncle Mobile Hobson of Virginia. He says, at come time to marry, and he married a black woman. That make me black, a spouse. In 1871, a white writer of Maryland observed in this Dorchester County at Indian Creek, some of the last Indians of the peninsula struck their wigwams toward the close of the last century, and there are now no full-blooded Aborigines in the Eastern Shore, although many of the freeborn Negroes show Indian traces. So again, going over the admixture between these groups and how both groups overlapped and how both groups were being called the same thing, which is basically a Negro, right? Quite commonly, however, some of the freeborn Negroes of the Eastern Shore continue to identify with and survive as Native people. The whites often tried to deny their Indianness, as in 1856, when a marker was erected to commemorate a woman who had testified that the Nanticoke people of Delaware had African ancestry. The Indians were referred to on the marker as arrogant Negroes that assumed to be what they were not. During the 18th century, most persons of mixed race, especially if free, were classified as mulattoes, musties, or persons of color. The term Negro was perhaps less likely to be used for such people, except as noted in the examples above. This usage continued in some states, such as Carolina and Virginia, well into the 19th century. For example, the jurist of South Carolina noted in 1852, it is not according to the use of language in this region to speak of one altogether black as a person of color. The phrase is almost exclusively applied to one of mixed blood in color. There you go. There you have it. So in Carolina, they were calling you mixed, you whatever, you black. This is how, and that's where y'all get it from. That's where y'all adopt it from. And that's what Carl Cooney was saying. Y'all applying this to Egyptians. So you're just looking at them. Oh, they black. They black. You know. Nonetheless, a change took place in such states as Indiana, 1817, Kentucky, 1852, and elsewhere, 1850s and early 1900s, as the term Negro came to encompass most persons of part African descent. This change may not have affected dark people of solely African or in American descent, especially if the African ancestry predominated. Since many, but not all, Native Americans were brown or dark colored without African ancestry, many of their descendants, when mixed only with African blood, would very likely be seen as Negroes by most Europeans. Especially in North America, where special terms such persons such as Sambo, Grifo, Lobo, Kafuso, Cabra, and Kobore never became current, and where musty ceased to be used and mulatto changed its meaning. The United States Census also tended to expand the use of the term black and Negro. In 1890, black was to be used for all persons having 3/4 or more black blood. In 1910, black was supposed to be applied only to full-blooded Negroes, while the matter of who was an Indian was left to the enumerator. So I just want to make a quick point on this as well. Nobody's fully quote unquote anything. So does that mean none of us are this? That none of us fit that category? We're at least a quarter European on average. See how this arbitrary shit doesn't fucking work when faced with reality. Anyway, all you need is people saying it. I'm showing you all of the people right here. Jack Forbes has recorded all of the people, the 4 different language groups, classifying people based on these arbitrary means. And none of it makes a lick of any goddamn sense thus far. Anything that's whimsical and that can change on a whim, anything can change on a whim is arbitrary, therefore it can't be real, but continue to dream on. The term mulatto was to be used for all other persons having some proportion of perceptible trace of Negro blood. It is certain that large numbers of Americans or part Americans were classified as Negro or mulatto under these rules. For example, of the Mattapony, only one person was counted as Indian by the census out of the reservation population of at least 40 persons. Similarly, the Pusey-Patuck of Long Island had only one person counted as Indian, doubtless because the rest were enumerated as Negroes or mulattoes. The 1910 census counted for 2,255 Negroes who were part Indian and were enrolled members of tribes. Another group of 1,793 tribal members were of mixed European, African, and American ancestry. Thus, only slighted more than 3,000 persons who were part African were counted with the Indian population, as compared with the hundreds of thousands who were doubtless counted as Negro or mulatto because of living away from federally recognized reservation areas. In 1930, a person of mixed Indian and Negro blood shall be returned as a Negro, unless the Indian blood predominates and the status as an Indian is generally accepted in the community. By 1940, all African-American hybrids were to be counted as Negroes, unless the Indian ancestry very definitely predominates and he is universally accepted as Indian. Basically, they were doing lookership. You got to look the part. If you don't look like an Indian, you're just a nigga. Even pure blood Indians could be counted as blacks, as in Nevada. In 1880, when the census enumerator categorized 90 members of the Duckwater Shoshone tribe in that manner, in the state of Delaware, more recent decades found that if a person said he was an Indian, he was recorded as either black or white, depending upon his appearance. And this is what Erica L. Coleman notes in her book, Let the Blood Remain Pure. She basically said to use an imprecise criteria based on your appearance to determine what you were and what racial box that you belong in and what classification we want to put your ass in. And she said it got so silly in those courts that you get two people from the same stock, so to speak, being classified as two different races. How that work? The instructions for the 1980 census indicated that any person checking both the black and Indian boxes was counted solely as black. Although in oral interviews, the race mentioned first for the mother of the respondent would be the one counted. More significantly, a long list of countries was supplied to census takers, with the appropriate category to be counted instead of the country name. A large number of countries, including Trinidad and virtually all the West Indies, were arbitrarily assigned to the black category. Thus, Americans of part Americans from Aruba, Trinidad, or Dominica would be counted as blacks. There go that word arbitrarily. Significantly, not a single country was assigned to the Indian category, including Guatemala, Bolivia, Peru, and Paraguay. Clearly, the census methods in 1980 had the effect of minimizing the count of Indians. In summary, it seems clear that many persons of Native American ancestry, in whole or part, have been at times classified as Negroes or blacks. Whoop, there it is. In several languages reviewed, we went over Portuguese, Spanish, German, and Dutch, and English. This is a matter of considerable significance for the scholar seeking to understand the actual ethnic or racial identity of non-white persons in the slave trade in the American colonies in the United States over the centuries. It would appear that the terms Moor, Negro, Swart, Black, etc. must be used very carefully in historical or sociological and anthropological writing. To discover the actual ethnicity of persons so categorized, one must know the specific geographical location from which they were derived. Of course, it is no doubt true that the majority of such persons were usually derived from Africa, but it remains an empirical question as to how many were from India, East Indies, and the Americas, especially during certain time periods. It is especially important, of course, that census data and other enumerations be utilized very carefully, since it is quite clear that the category of Negro almost always included people who are not purely of African descent. Maybe I should read that again. The category of Negro almost always included people who were not of purely African descent. This is especially true in Brazil, in the United States area, but also may be applicable to the Spanish-speaking regions. And, you know, bringing up Brazil, that was in my debate, second round. Brazil, majority of the black, what we call black, and those samples there, majority of their ancestry was actually European. Majority of it, on average. This is especially true in Brazil and the United States area, but may be applicable to Spanish-speaking regions. Such a conclusion will come as no surprise to many people in the Afro-American community, the United States, who have been long aware of extensive Indian ancestry and who have, at least since the Civil War, self-consciously utilized the term Negro or Black, and of course colored, to encompass people of mixed Native American and African descent. Individuals such as Ann Plato, Paul Coupe, Crispus Attucks, Haram Revels, and many others have long. Haram Revels is E1B1A, by the way. He's registered on Family Tree DNA, and many others have long been referred to as Negroes, despite having perhaps at least as much Native American as African ancestry, and even when living in the Indian communities, as was the case with the Attucks and the Kufi. From a scholarly perspective, the logic of evolving white racism, which has tended to classify people in very arbitrary ways. I keep saying that. I keep saying, this is what you're dealing with. This is not reality. You're dealing with arbitrary shit. That's what race is. Arbitrary. The shit can change on the women. It always has. It's applicable to so many damn things. I'm doing it for black people. Which set? Which one? Throw your hood up, nigga. VM on the Catholic Church, nigga. Anyway, white racism, which has tended to classify people in very arbitrary ways, is neither the logic of genetics nor of bona fide ethnicity. It's not from genes. It's not from your genes, which that what you have to show it in your genes for it to be real, because your genes are real. Those are properties of physical properties. We can see that. We can examine that. All this other shit is just of human imaginaire, and we've seen it was used willy nilly to classify people as they wish. That's just how it went. Well, this is fake. Yeah, that's fake too. But y'all treat these things as real. And this is why people get fucked up behind it. This is why people do evil things behind this shit, because they think it's real. They think that you're inferior because you're quote unquote black, or you're superior because you're quote unquote white. Or you have a higher pain tolerance, so they do surgery on your ass without no fucking anesthesia. That's what race realist does to you. That's the history of race realism. I can enslave you because you are black. That's race realism. Anyway, the mixture of African and American does not make a person black or Negro any more than it makes one automatically Indian. Modern scholars must aver that it both pernicious and dangerous to read into the evidence and to affirm for earlier times the pronouncements of a dominant social caste. Their myths, their prejudice, and their systems of classification and nomenclature must be subjected to critical and empirical reevaluation. This necessity for radical reinterpretation will become still clearer as we proceed to discuss terms used for brown-colored persons, and that's the motherfucking deal. That's the entire chapter. Took me 2 hours, but I got through it. Here's the cover of the book, Americans and Native Africans and Native Americans, The Language of Race and Evolution of Red Black Peoples by Jack D. Forbes. Again, this book ain't got shit to do with no goddamn Aboriginal claim. It's not making them claims you're talking about. It's analyzing a survey of all of these accounts and how these names and these words, these arbitrary terms were used and applied to what people and which people. That's it. Y'all keep watching. Y'all gonna learn something, man. I'm an Agent Smith, your bitch ass.
You. Yes, me. Me too.
And as to KOT, everybody argues like you. Everybody argues like you did last night. All the people, all the identitarians argue like you. All the race realists argue just like you did. You will sit up there and say race is real, or this is real, or these people are this because someone said they were. And that's your proof for it. Very circular, very fucking stupid, very idiotic. And if you come at me like that whenever we cross roads, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you. VM on the Catholic clergy, nigga. You niggas not worthy, nigga. VM, we out this bitch.
For sure. I got my gag, so you know what that means. It's a bust back thing. I ain't going out like a hoe. When you're coming to get me, I got the fofo. When you come to down me, player, please don't miss. Cause that don't do nothing but get my trigger finger pissed. If I live, I live. If I die, it's cool. Cause I know for sure when I was here that I was a fool. If you're gon' drill me, come on and drill me. It's all good cause I got some people to see. Why I'm here, I'm getting full all the time, get blunted. My company on the move, we bought the Benz 500. AKs and Glocks in the back of Lexus Jeeps. Having big baller parties every other week. This is the click, nigga, 226. Black connection, nigga, again, the code is 226. Dropping dope hits, taking a nigga bitch. While you're on that flight, I'm busting nuts in your wife. All assault rifles, the weapons that's on my team. SKs, AKs, M1s, and carbines. Fulfilling dreams, going to the top, nigga. Don't play a hate, cause we'll still hit your block, nigga. Baby gangster ain't nothing nice. A young nigga, trigger happy, that'll put it in your life, ain't right. Represent uptown to the fullest, finger on the trigger, and I'm ready to pull it. Got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? What you won't do, nigga? That's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? What you won't do, nigga? That's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger. What you won't do? Uptown on the way, bitch. So let us through. Finger on the trigger. What you won't do? Downtown, get out the way. That's all on you. Take it how you wanna, bring it how you feel. My niggas is conscious and we kill or be killed. Fuck doing drive-bys, man, we do a pull-up. The nigga on the passenger side automatically died from several gunshot wounds to the head. On the scene he dead, Chopper City niggas fled. Won't you listen to Ziggy, get your car doors bulletproof. It's raining chopper, so get a bulletproof roof too. You got yay, download it, nigga. 9-6, you getting napped, so you best not show it, nigga. But that's when you blow it, nigga. You don't get kicked in, we want you. Yay, high powered AK, balls moved in your face, no trace. Beat the case, go to the wake, make sure it ain't a fake. I want your name plate, cash in your Versace shoes. If You stingy, get plucked, nigga, that's all on you. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Busters, get out the way, that's all on you. Street shit is what I'm into, you got it, I'm coming to get you. Don't hesitate, nigga, other BG gon' have to split you. I'm down for whatever, I'ma ass with that chopper. If you're playing with me, then them 50 shots gon' stop you. No bullshitting, nigga, my dream is to make a meal. Paper chasing, ain't no faking, player haters get killed. Young trill, baby gangster into pimping them hoes. But before I trick the hoes, my money goes to my nose. In fact, I opt the most t-shirts and jabos. Soldier Reebok, straight sticking to the G code. Uptown is the home of the carjackers, robbers, gangster rappers, head splitters and kidnappers. Philip C is where I shop for that D. Not the 17th, the real niggas in that 3. Play with them, hard head niggas, they split them. Raw dope, they sell it, I get it, I can tell it. How it go, back up or get bang, nigga. Street smarts the game, nigga, gotta let them hang, nigga. Pussy nigga got beef with the night creepers. Me, brother, and Diesel riding with them street sweepers. Old nigga want slang without a click. He don't want share, so we gon' ride on that bitch. We bout to turn your block to a war zone. I'm warning you to bring the little kids in they home. Cause when we spin the bin, bullets just getting spit. I gave you a fair warning, so if you hit, you hit. Cause I ain't slacking when I do what I gotta do. Stop being nosy, bitch, but that's all on you. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Downtown, get out the way, that's all on you. Got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? What you won't do, nigga, that's all on you. I got my finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Uptown's on the way, bitch, so let us through. Finger on the trigger, what you won't do? Play ahead to get out the way, that's all on you. Toting choppers in the 9-6.